Okay, in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take your movies and make a button menu system to play them. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Skier Flash video, and I need to export it. So let me move the library just over here for a second. So here's my video you can see. I've got a skier going down, and I want to make note here, there's 40 frames. So what I'm going to do is with each movie I need to export. So I go File and Export Movie, and I'm going to call this skier underscore 40 because there's 40 frames. And I'm going to press Save and OK. And so now I've finished with that, and I'm going to do the same with the other files. So if you take a look, I did the same with the climbing, the seesaw, skater, and skier. I exported them all. And when I export them, I put the number of frames. So climbing had 104 frames, seesaw had 15, skater had 50, and skier had 40. So now I'm ready to make a menu and a button system. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click on the Flash document and make a layer for buttons. So I'll call it buttons. And so in this frame, I'm going to just take a rectangle and I'm going to draw a simple button. So right now it's kind of a boring, and you can make a much better one, but I'm trying to be quick here. Make a bit wider, maybe a cooler thing, and I'm going to make it blue because I like blue. So here you go. Here's a box that's blue and has a cool border. Great. So now I want to turn this into a button. So as I said, we made a skier video. So I'm going to make some text and put some text on here and go skier. Now I need to change the color because blue on blue would be invisible. So I'm going to change the color to white. So how do I turn this into a button? Easy. To turn it into a button, I select it all and I go modify, convert to a symbol, and this time I'm going to select button and I'm going to call it BTN skier. Now once I go BTN skier, what I'm going to do is if you look at your library, you're going to see the library, and I'll just put it maybe over to the side here. Close that off. So I'll move the library. My screen's on low resolution, so I don't have a lot of room, but you can see in my library here, I've got button skier, and it shows a little graphic of it. I want to edit the button. So to edit the button, what I do is I double click on it. And by the way, when you make a button, you'll want to make sure that you've got color and stuff on your square because anything that's see-through won't be clickable. So just a little note. Okay, so I double click on the button, and you can see now at the top here, button skier pops up. So I'm in the editor for the button. The scene is back here, and I'll eventually click to get back here. The other thing I want you to pay note of is I've got different states, the up state, the over state, and the down state that I'm going to work with. So what I do here is to work with the next state, I click on the up state and I press the F6 key. So click on it, F6, and now I'm in over. Over is when I hover my mouse over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text to glow maybe red. So I might highlight the text to glow red or maybe even glow yellow. I could even click on the body of this and I can tell it to be a different fill color, maybe to go a bit lighter as well. Great, so that's when I hover the mouse over it. Next, I want to do the down state. So again, I press the F6 key. So I press F6 on the keyboard, which is at the top of the keyboard, and it will make a new state, which will be the down state. And what I do for the down state is I'm just going to move this down a smidgen. So it's just going to drop down. And I go back to scene one. If I want to test this, I could test it by going Control and Test, and you can see as I hover, it glows blue, and when I click, it goes down. So nice and easy. Now, to make things look good and consistent, here's a little trick. I'm going to go to the library, and in the library, there's a tiny little menu, which is right here in the corner of the library. And with this, I can duplicate the button and make it quite small. So let me do that right now. I'm going to click here, and I go duplicate. And it's going to call it copy, and I'm just going to call this one skater. And I'll do the same thing 2 more times. I'll call this one seesaw. And then finally, I'll do one more duplicate for the climbing. So, why did I do that? Well, let me show you. If I put button climbing and drag it on, it's going to say skier. All I need to do is double click on it to enter the editor, and you'll see button climbing. And so in the up state, I want it to say climbing. In the over state, I want it to glow yellow and say climbing. And notice I don't even have to change the color. It automatically will be in the right position, the right font, the right everything. I just need to change the text, and I can go back to the scene. So it's that easy to add buttons and modify the buttons. I'll show you again. Skater, double click, and I click on the A tool. I click the over, and I click the down. Great, and I go back to my scene. Last one is the seesaw. So I select it, double click, seesaw. I'm going to take the A tool, click on the over state, and click on the down state. Great. So now I've finished with my buttons. So now it's time to do a bit of coding. So one of the first things I need to do is I'm going to select this frame, and in this frame I'm going to go to frame 1. So I click this, and you'll notice in the action in the coding area, this is really important, it says that I'm on the chiclet button frame 1, which is right here. So right here, what action is going to go here on not a button, but on the frame called buttons, what the action is going to be is this action. I'm going to write stop. And I could do that by using this plus. Watch how I do this. I click on the plus, I go to global function, timeline, and tell it to stop. So now it tells me that at this frame it's going to stop. Okay, I'm going to make another layer. This layer I'm going to call movies. And now I want to import the movies. So I'm going to go to frame 10, for example. And at frame 10, I'm going to insert timeline, a blank keyframe. I'm going to give the frame a name. And here's where we give the frame a name. Very important. I'm going to name this Skier Movie. Because when I tell it to play, I'm going to tell it to play the Skier movie. Watch what I do. Skier movie. To get the Skier movie, I go File, Import to the library, and I go to my folder that I made, and I've got the Skier, which is 40 long, and I press open. And now up here in my library, you can see in my library I can scroll down to the Skier movie, and I simply just drag that, and I drag it onto the stage. Great, it's 40 frames long. So again, I want to press F6 40 frames from where I am. So 40 from 10 would make this 50. So I hit frame 50 and I press F6. Okay, so at frame 50, what I want to do is I want to global functions, timeline control, go to and play, and I want to go back to frame 1, which I named menu. So it's going to go to the menu. Okay, let me add another movie. So I'm going to go up here to maybe frame 100. So there's going to be just a blank in here. So I'm going to insert timeline, a blank keyframe, and then I'm going to insert to the library by going File, Import to the library, the skater, and it's 50 long. So I go Open, and I'm going to go to the name, and I'm going to call this Skater Movie. So I name frame 100 as Skater Movie, and then I drag the skater onto the timeline and center it up, and there's the skater going to do his jump, which is perfect. And I go to frame 150 because the skater's 50 long, and I press F6. And so the Skater Movie is going to go from 100 to 150. The action in frame 150 is timeline control, go to and play, and in quotation marks, and I've got to make sure I use the quotation marks, I'm going to go back to the main menu. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing, and let me, I'll go to frame 200 this time. I'll insert a blank keyframe, and then I'll import my next movie. So I import to the library the Seesaw. It's only 15 long. And so I go to 215, and I press, before I do that, I'm going to call this frame name. I'll press F6. And before I do that, I go back to frame 200, and I'm going to drag the Seesaw into there. Oops. Let me undo that. So I go to frame 200, and I'm going to give the name Seesaw underscore movie. And then what I'm going to do is I'll drag from my library the Seesaw, which is 15, and I'll drag that onto the stage. Okay, so the Seesaw Movie is going to go from 200. I go to 215, I press F6, and I've got Seesaw Movie. Finally, last movie to import, I'll do it at 220, and I'll hit Insert Timeline, blank keyframe, and then I'll import the last movie, import to the library the last movie, which is Climbing. I go to the frame, I'm going to call it Climbing underscore movie, and it was 115, so 220 plus 115 is 335. So I go to 335, I press F6. Oops. Before I do that, I got to put the climbing in. And I go to, sorry, it's 104. So 215 plus 104 is 319. So I go to frame 319, I press F6. The climbing movie goes that whole duration, and I go timeline and go to and play, and it's going to go to the menu once it finishes. So now all these are going to go to menu. Well, where's menu? So I go to frame 1, and I didn't give it a name. So I'm going to go down here, and I need to name the frame, and I'm going to call it menu. Perfect. Just about done. I better save, so I'm going to hit save, and I'll save it in this folder, and I'll call this final. I'm going to now show you how to add the buttons to do the script to it. And it's very easy. It's the same thing for every button. So let's do the skier. Skier is going to play the skier movie. So I click on frame 1, I click the skier, and it's going to say current selection button skier. So hopefully everyone can see this. It says button skier. So what I want to do, I'm going to use the same things, but there's a couple of steps that I have to do here for the button. And here's the steps. So for a button, I can go to Global Functions Movie and select On. On Release. So I double click on Release. So on release means when I let go of the mouse. And then inside this curly bracket and this curly bracket is where I want it to skip ahead to the skier movie. So I tell it to global function timeline, go to and play, and in quotations, exactly as I wrote it, skier movie. And now it's going to play the skier movie. And I do the same thing with the next movie, which was called Skater movie. So let me do the skater button, and then I'll add in this video because you can get it. So I go to frame 1 of the button. I select the skater, and if it doesn't come up, I need to click just in a white space and collect it. And now it says button skater. I go to global functions, movie clip on release, and then inside the curly brackets, global functions, go to and play, and now it's going to play the skater underscore movie. Let me demo. I haven't quite finished with the last 2 buttons, but I've got skater and I've got the skier going, and I'll just test it by going control and test movie. You'll see the movie if I go skier. There's my skier. Wonderful. Goes back to the menu because at the end I told it to. And then on the menu, when I click on skater, it does the skater and then goes back to the menu. Great. Now that I'm ready, I can go file and export this as my final project, final button project.